I always wondered why my sister was so obsessed with my past, especially the part that involved my high school ex, Andrew. She brought him up at family dinners, during late-night phone calls, and even on my wedding day. I chalked it up to her misplaced nostalgia or some childish belief in high school romances being the pinnacle of true love. At first, I found it amusing and even endearing, but over time, it turned into an unsettling kind of pressure. She didn't seem to understand I had moved on with my life. I was happy, truly content most days. I met my husband, Damien, 3 years after high school. He was nothing like Andrew. He wasn't the star athlete or the class clown. He was dependable, thoughtful, and quietly ambitious. While Andrew thrived on showing off at parties and being the center of attention, Damien preferred to build a stable life. Our relationship grew from a friendship based on mutual respect, and eventually, we married. My sister, Alicia, never seemed to celebrate our union the way I expected. She rolled her eyes at our ceremony and spent the reception talking about how Andrew would have thrown a wilder party. Mom wasn't much better. She adored Andrew when we dated in high school, convinced we were destined for each other because of his good looks and charismatic spirit. When I introduced Damien to her, she politely smiled and commented on how safe he seemed. That word stuck to him like a dull label, as though choosing safety meant I had settled for less. Yet, Damien was more than that. He was kind, supportive, and deeply in love with me. Still, Mom sighed wistfully whenever Andrew's name cropped up, her tone betraying a certain longing for that teenage relationship of mine. Fast forward a few years, and Alicia still kept pushing. She wanted me to meet Andrew for coffee or invite him over for dinner with the family. Each time, I refused. I was tired of explaining that I was content with Damien. Yet, Alicia seemed convinced I was missing out on something magical, as if Andrew and I had left our story unfinished. Whenever I pointed out that Andrew had cheated on me back in senior year, she waved it off as young people's mistakes. The selective amnesia about his flaws was infuriating, but I never imagined how far they'd go. I discovered I was pregnant 8 months ago. Damien and I had been trying for a child for nearly a year, and when the test showed those 2 pink lines, I cried tears of joy. He spun me around our living room, promising that our home would be filled with laughter and love. We told Alicia and Mom the news at a small family dinner. Damien thought they'd be ecstatic, and for a moment, they seemed excited. However, their eyes carried a hint of disappointment, as though they believed I was locking myself into a life with the wrong man. During those early days of my pregnancy, Alicia's repeated suggestions grew bolder. She would bring up Andrew's successes, his blossoming marketing career, his fancy condo, his overseas trips. Apparently, my ex had turned into quite the eligible bachelor, and Alicia loved to remind me. Mom chimed in with lines about how Andrew never forgot my birthday and even sent her messages now and then, inquiring about me. I felt cornered by the two of them, as though they were orchestrating some grand romantic reunion in their heads while I sat there, pregnant and very much married to someone else. Unnerving. 2 weeks before the party, Alicia called me, sounding. She claimed she and Mom had planned a small baby celebration in my honor. According to her, it would be just close friends and family, an intimate gathering filled with gifts and toasts to celebrate the upcoming arrival of my child. I was nearly 7 months pregnant at that point and reluctant to attend big events, but she assured me it would be low-key. Damien had a business trip that weekend, so he couldn't come. Alicia told me not to worry, that Mom and she would handle everything. I believed her. The day of the gathering arrived, and I walked into Mom's house with a cautious optimism. My belly was prominent, and I felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. The living room was decorated with pastel balloons, streamers, and a banner that read, "Welcome, baby." A few acquaintances milled around, offering congratulations. But something felt off. I noticed no one I considered a true friend was there, just some of Mom's neighbors, Alicia's coworkers, and a few distant relatives. Instead of the warm, supportive vibe I expected, the air crackled with strange anticipation. I couldn't shake an odd sense of dread. It all became clear when Andrew walked in. At first, I thought he was there by coincidence, maybe stopping by to see Mom for some unrelated reason. But then I noticed the way Alicia rushed to greet him with a wide grin, how Mom beamed from across the room. This was no coincidence. They had invited him. My stomach churned, not just because I was pregnant, but because I realized how deliberately they had orchestrated this meeting. My supposed baby celebration was a sham, a twisted setup designed to push Andrew and me together. I felt betrayed and deeply humiliated. Andrew acted casual, as though this were a normal social visit. He approached me with a smirk and congratulated me on the pregnancy. I mumbled a guarded thank you, my eyes darting to Alicia and Mom for some explanation. They offered none. Alicia merely gestured for us to talk, as though we had some urgent catching up to do. My mind flashed back to how Andrew had broken my heart all those years ago, how he had lied and manipulated me. Seeing him standing there now, in the middle of what was supposed to be my celebration, burned like acid. I remember the moment Alicia nudged Andrew closer to me, as if we were two puzzle pieces she wanted to fit together. My jaw clenched. I felt my baby kick inside my womb, a timely reminder of the life I was nurturing with Damien. Andrew tried to strike up a conversation about old memories, the prom we attended, the restaurants we used to love. It made me sick to my stomach to hear him gloss over the betrayal. He even joked about how we might have gotten married if things had turned out differently. My rage simmered dangerously beneath my skin. At some point, Alicia clinked a fork against a glass to grab everyone's attention. She launched into a speech about how life can take unexpected turns, how old flames can rekindle under the right circumstances, and how, sometimes, the heart knows before the mind does. My heart pounded, a mix of anger and shock that she would dare imply a pregnant woman's heart could still belong to an ex who once betrayed her. Mom stood beside Alicia, nodding like they shared some grand secret. The other guests just looked confused or politely amused. Andrew raised his glass, fueling my indignation. Unable to hold my tongue any longer, I stepped forward and demanded to know what they were thinking. I asked Alicia and Mom directly why they believed I'd want Andrew near me, pregnant or otherwise. The room fell silent. Mom's face hardened. She said something about doing what's best for my future. Alicia muttered that true love deserves another chance. Andrew stood there, hands in his pockets, smirking like he was the star of this show. My cheeks burned hot. I realized they had planned this for months, hoping to create some dramatic revelation that would tear my marriage apart. I refused to play their game. Summoning whatever courage I could muster, I turned on my heel and stormed toward the door. Several guests gawked, while Alicia pleaded for me to just talk it out, and Mom exclaimed that I was being dramatic. Andrew called after me, but I didn't turn back. My hands trembled with fury as I threw open the door and walked out into the brisk air. My heart hammered, and tears threatened to spill over, but I refused to let them see me cry. I drove home, my mind racing with thoughts of how to respond. Damien returned the following day and found me sitting in the kitchen, eyes red from a sleepless night. I recounted everything, the fake baby party, Andrew's surprise appearance, and my family's blatant betrayal. He sat quietly, a hand resting on my shoulder, letting me vent my anger and disbelief. Finally, he spoke, his voice trembling with rage. He wanted to confront them all, demand answers, and protect me from further stress. But I stopped him. I had something else in mind, a plan that would ensure Alicia, Mom, and Andrew understood just how badly they had crossed a line. Unforgivable. First, I contacted a lawyer friend who specialized in defamation and personal disputes. I wanted to understand my options to see if there was any legal recourse. Though their stunt might not qualify as a strict legal offense, I felt stronger just having the information. Next, I decided to confront Alicia privately, away from Mom's protective sphere. I sent her a text, asking her to meet me at a cafe near her work. She replied with cautious enthusiasm, probably hoping I'd come around to her point of view. Damien offered to join, but I insisted on doing this alone. Period. When Alicia arrived at the cafe, she looked nervous, her smile uncertain. I wasted no time. I laid out how her actions had hurt me, how she had undermined my marriage, and how I would never forgive such betrayal. She tried to defend herself, saying she only wanted me to be happy, that Andrew had changed. I reminded her of his history of cheating and my choice to move on. Tears welled in her eyes, but I stood firm. I told her she was no sister to me if she believed humiliating me was an acceptable way to show love. She broke down, sobbing into her latte, but I refused to console her. She expected me to crumble, to offer her some path to redemption. I had none. Once trust is shattered, the shards can cut deeper than anyone expects. I informed her I'd be avoiding family events until I felt safe again. She gasped, claiming Mom would be devastated. I simply shrugged, pointing out that Mom's involvement was just as appalling. Alicia reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I left her there in tears, making it clear that our bond was severed by her own manipulative hand. Next, I confronted Mom. She had the nerve to call me that evening, demanding I apologize for making a scene at the baby party. My voice shook with anger as I told her she was the one who owed me an apology for orchestrating the fiasco. She tried to spin it like she only wanted what was best for me. I replied that any mother who truly cared wouldn't lie to her pregnant daughter or attempt to sabotage her marriage. She fell silent, perhaps realizing there was no justification for her actions. I hung up, ignoring her frantic calls afterward. Finally, there was Andrew. I had no intention of ever speaking to him again, but he seemed to think we had a spark. He sent me a string of texts, some apologetic, some flirtatious. He reminisced about our high school days, claimed he had matured, and wrote that maybe our child deserved to know its real father figure. That enraged me more than anything else. Damien was my husband, and the father of my baby. Furious, I blocked Andrew's number. When he tried to contact me through social media, I blocked him there too. I refused to feed his delusions. As the weeks passed, I found a sense of peace in the boundaries I had established. Damien supported me unwaveringly, and we focused on preparing for our baby's arrival. I painted the nursery walls a sage green while he assembled the crib. Every kick and flutter in my womb reminded me of what truly mattered. Alicia sent me long texts begging for forgiveness. Mom left tearful voicemails accusing me of breaking the family apart. Andrew continued lurking on the periphery, trying to glean scraps of information about me. But I built a fortress around my new life, ignoring them all. Yet, something in me still craved closure. I refused to forgive them, but I wanted them to understand the finality of my decision. So, I wrote 3 letters, one each to Mom, Alicia, and Andrew. Each letter spelled out why I could never trust them again. There was no room for apologies or compromises. I included detailed memories of the hurt they caused, reminding them that betrayal has lasting consequences. Once finished, I mailed the letters, feeling an odd sense of relief as I dropped them in the mailbox. No more chances. Absolutely none. No more illusions of reconciliation. In the final month of my pregnancy, Damien and I decided to host our own baby shower, inviting only friends we trusted and colleagues who had become like family. We rented a small community hall and decorated it with understated elegance. The atmosphere was warm and genuine, full of laughter and supportive wishes. I felt overwhelmed by love and gratitude that day. While Alicia and Mom undoubtedly heard about it, I didn't extend an invitation. I made it clear through my actions that they had forfeited their right to share in my joy. My unborn child deserved better than lies. Shortly after, labor pains arrived in the middle of a stormy night. Damien rushed me to the hospital, where we spent hours riding waves of contractions. When our son arrived, the world seemed to stand still. Holding him in my arms, I felt a surge of protectiveness like nothing else. Damien cried, whispering how beautiful our baby was. I named our son Elliot, a name I'd chosen long ago, far from any influences of my meddling family. We remained in the hospital for 2 days, and during that time, I resolved that no one who betrayed me would meet him. Mom tried visiting unannounced. She called the nurses' station, claiming she was my mother and had a right to see her grandson. The staff asked if I would allow it, and I firmly said no. Absolutely not. Alicia sent flowers to my room, but I told the nurse to discard them. Even Andrew, in a final act of audacity, phoned the hospital, pretending to be a concerned relative. My refusal to admit any of them was absolute. Their betrayal was still fresh, and I wasn't about to let them intrude on the most sacred moment of my new family's life. When Damien and I took Elliot home, we fell into an exhausting but routine of feedings and diaper changes. Late at night, while rocking my son to sleep, I reflected on the swirl of events that had led here. My own mother and sister had nearly ruined one of the happiest periods of my life. Andrew had tried to worm his way back in, yet I felt only relief that I had stood my ground. I protected myself, my marriage, and my child. In a way, I had found a new strength, one forged by betrayal and sealed by resolve. One morning, I received a message from a cousin who lived out of state. She told me Alicia and Mom were telling anyone who'd listen that I was ungrateful and under Damien's control. This cousin had heard some outrageous claims that Damien was somehow abusive and that Andrew was the true love I'd foolishly thrown away. I felt anger coiling in my gut, but I also realized their words rang hollow to anyone who truly knew me. I asked my cousin not to engage with them. My life wasn't up for debate, and their lies would eventually collapse upon themselves. In time, the hurt dulled. My priority became my husband and son, not the relentless drama manufactured by my mother and sister. When Elliot turned 6 months old, I sent out holiday cards. None went to Mom, Alicia, or Andrew. It was a small but powerful act of erasure, reminding me that I was free to define my own family. Some relatives thought I was being cruel, but I knew the truth. They had betrayed me in a truly unforgivable way. Their choices had consequences. I wasn't required to keep toxic people in my life simply because we shared blood. I sometimes wonder if Alicia, Mom, or Andrew ever reflect on what they lost. Alicia lost her sister, Mom lost her daughter, and Andrew lost any last shred of sympathy I might have had left. Perhaps they still spin stories where I'm the villain who refused to see reason. None of that matters to me anymore. My life is rich with genuine love, Damien's unwavering devotion, Elliot's innocent giggles, and my own sense of self-worth. I discovered that I don't need people who completely disregard my boundaries and disrespect my choices. My strength comes from protecting what truly belongs to me. So here I stand, unbowed and unbroken, forging ahead with the family I chose and the child who holds my heart. I won't lie, sometimes I miss the idea of a loving mother, a supportive sister. But those were illusions. In reality, they tried to manipulate me for their own nostalgia and fantasies. I refuse to let them sabotage my life again. I have no regrets about cutting them off. My door remains closed to those who conspired against me. If they believed my forgiveness was inevitable, they were wrong. Vengeance came in the form of self-respect, and it tastes sweet.